Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host. Yes, you know my name, Ed Dentzel. I hope everybody's having a great start to your week. Of course, for some of you, being that yesterday was President's Day, you got the day off. I hope that went well for you. I didn't even mention that in yesterday's show. I was so caught up in other things. But hopefully got to spend time with your family. I guess your kids didn't have to go to school. For those of you in the private sector, maybe a lot of you had to go to work anyway. However, many of you, maybe any of you private businesses that do a lot of work with government, maybe the banks, right? They were closed yesterday. They're somewhat private, being that the Fed has been a big discussion in the United States economy, and how the private banks are altering their plans for the future, given what the Fed may or may not do. So there are some industries out there very connected to government. So maybe they were closed yesterday. Really, I didn't notice that much of a difference here in Madeira Beach, Florida, but yesterday was President's Day. So I hope you enjoyed it. You can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. I think tomorrow, I'm going to go shoot my gun for the first time. Yes, I know. It's been over 2 weeks since I took my class. Did I tell you about that? I don't remember if I told you about this or not, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Once you take this NRA class, and I guess this goes for most states that have concealed carry laws, or permits, I should say, you have to then go get signed up. You get this certificate. Of course, you shoot the guns. I told you all about that class I took over 2 weeks ago. But then you have to go to the county. There's a couple of different places you can go in the Tampa area where you go, you sign up, fill out all the paperwork. They take your fingerprint, they take a picture, and then somewhere down the road, you get this card that you carry with you to let anybody know that you are a concealed carry holder. You know, you're allowed to carry a gun on you, concealed in Florida, in permitted places. Well, you have to get an appointment to do that, and it costs some money. I have to wait till March 8th to go get that done. I called at the beginning of last week. I have to wait till March 8th. That's how busy they are here in Florida. And you have to call for appointments anyway, no matter if they're busy or not. But March 8th was the soonest that I could get in. And then after you do that, I think it's going to take another 3 months before I actually get the card and before I actually can carry my gun on me. So you got to wait. I don't think that that's some government conspiracy thing. I think that's they're just totally backlogged with people who it's now a concern of theirs, at least in Florida. And I'm going to guess in all the other states where you can conceal carry, that's the way it is there too. My dad has a card. I didn't ask him how long it took to get his, but he's had his for a few years, and his is from Pennsylvania. Forgot to tell you, I don't think I told you that. I was just totally flabbergasted when I called and said I was going to have to wait till March 8th. So that's what I have to do. But I haven't shot my gun yet, but I'm going to go tomorrow. I wanted to wait for the additional magazines for my gun to come in. Didn't want to show up there with 2 magazines and have to reload so much while I was at the range. So I got those, so I'm all pumped up. So I'm going to go shoot this. My dad and I are going to go shoot. I also got a loader, so it's going to be easy to put the bullets in the magazines because doing it manually is just a little too hard for this guy. So I'm looking forward to it. We'll see how much kick this 9mm has compared to the 22 that I got to shoot at that class. I'm going to say it's going to be considerably different. I guess I'll just have to get used to it, but I'm really looking forward to it. Should be interesting. I'm going to get my own glasses and own ear muffs or whatever they call them. They look like headphones, but there's no music. I'm going to get those things too, I guess, since I plan to go at least decently often. Maybe once a month to go and practice starting tomorrow. But I won't be able to carry my gun on me until I get my permit, which, like I said, probably won't be till this summer. Oh, well. There's another point that I wanted to make, more of a political point. I mean, guns are obviously a political topic in the United States, but even more of a political topic. And I forgot to mention this when I was at that class, that those, the two men and the woman who ran the class, one of them was the owner of the store, Bill Jackson's, I want to say Island of Adventure, but it's not that. It's something else. Bill Jackson's, we'll just call it that, was the owner. He got up and spoke a little bit. And then a woman, she got up and did like the next hour. And then a guy did the rest of it. And then she came back at the end when we went to the range to shoot. Here's what I think I know about gun people. They take their gun laws much more seriously than, they're much more loyal to their ideology regarding guns than environmentalists are to their attitude toward the environment. I forgot to pass that on to you after that class, because I told you about it, and somehow that just slipped my mind. But as I was sitting there with the other people in the class, I realized how seriously they take it, and how they will not test even though you could say that maybe they even think that gun laws are even too stringent here in Florida. They went on and on about how they do follow the laws and we should follow the laws. That's just the way it is. And then if the legislature in Florida changes something to make it even easier to own guns or what to do with your guns, then that's what you should do. But until that point, you need to follow the law. And they were very consistent. You just don't get that on the left, do you? There was just something about, I just thought that environmentalists, they want us to do this, they want us to do that, in cars, and oil, and everything else. We know what those issues are, and we know what they tell us. But then we know how many of those people, Al Gore, Leonardo DiCaprio, don't follow that at all. And that's what I've said in the past. And it didn't jump out at me as much until I took a class with people who think like I do regarding guns. And I've said this before. I've told you before, and if any lefties listen to the show, the reason the left fails on environmental issues, and the reason it has to rely on the courts to push it forward, is because the people who talk the most about it aren't consistent. They're hypocrites. That's why. And the reason, though, that gun ownership has gone up, and the reason that concealed carry laws are as common as ever in the modern United States, is because the gun lobby has been consistent and they aren't seen as hypocrites. As much as the left tries to say otherwise, we know all the statistics that are out there. The places where the guns are legally are the places that are safest in the United States. Mm-hmm. And I saw that 2 weeks ago with those people. I said it's no wonder that we, as on the right who believe in the Second Amendment and gun rights, continue to make strides while environmentalists, with the population, while environmentalists have to rely on courts and executive orders, things like that. It's because, frankly, our leaders are just better than their leaders. The people who are outspoken, the people who get in front of the cameras, the people who teach the classes on our side are just more consistent, they have more allegiant to their beliefs than the left does regarding environmentalism. That's just the way it goes. I forgot to pass that on a couple weeks ago, so I have to bring it up today. It's a little bit of, I guess, of a non sequitur, given everything that's gone on in the last few days in politics, but I wanted to pass that on to you, and I want you to remember that. That's the way we should look at it. If you go take a gun course, I think you'll see what I mean. These people who are training other regular people to own guns, carry guns, they're very, very serious. Environmentalists, they pretend to be serious, but we know that their actions are much different than their words. So let's move on to what is current, and that is Antonin Scalia dying this weekend. It was interesting what happened. I didn't have a chance to talk about this either Sunday or yesterday. That I found this out on Saturday evening like the rest of you did, but I was in the process of going to eat with my family. Found it out right as some of my other family members were getting there. And as I've told you, I don't talk about politics usually in large groups and family. And the people who are getting together, we do have a diverse range of opinion on politics. So you don't want to bring it up. At least I don't. So I had to eat that whole meal, and I was the only person at the table, I think, who knew that. And then as we were leaving, I whispered to my dad as we were walking out, wanted you to know before we sat down tonight, I found out looking at my phone that Antonin Scalia died. And his reaction was the exact same as my reaction was about an hour and a half before that. And he started shaking his head. No, that's not good. That's not good at all. That's exactly what my reaction was when I was sitting outside that Olive Garden, which is where we were eating, waiting for the rest of my family to show up. And looked at it and said, oh, this isn't good. And it's not good. It certainly does feel, and there's an overriding, I think, feeling, there has to be among conservatives right now. I know I feel it. Kind of feels like some dark days, doesn't it? Between Donald Trump leading in the polls, leading in South Carolina, winning in New Hampshire, despite his kookiness. You got executive orders from Barack Obama. And then we have Antonin Scalia dying when there are some important cases coming to the court. And what it makes the court now 4-4. And we're going to get into what should happen the rest of the year regarding a new Supreme Court justice. And it could be that some of these cases end up 4-4, which means whatever the lower court held will be the deciding opinion. And that will go against us as conservatives in at least a few of those cases. Just when we were thinking that not too long ago that, okay, we're going to get to the end of Barack Obama's term. He's not going to get to appoint somebody to the Supreme Court. We're going to have at least 4 reliable justices. Hopefully they'll stick around. Maybe Ruth Bader Ginsburg will retire. Maybe if we get a good Republican in there, we get another Supreme Court justice and we'll be okay. We'll just kind of hold the fort. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It doesn't look like it right now. Really right now, if you just take a snapshot on February 16th, 2016, it looks like either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton is going to win President of the United States, and neither of them is going to appoint somebody that conservatives like. I can tell you that right now. I have absolutely no confidence, none, that Donald Trump would ever nominate somebody, even with a Republican Congress, along the lines of an Antonin Scalia. Or a Sam Alito, or Clarence Thomas, or even as bad, the mistakes that he's made, a John Roberts. I have no hopes, or Anthony Kennedy. I have no hopes of Donald Trump's nominee getting anywhere near those guys. Whoever Donald Trump nominates, whether you like it or not, is going to be closer to Sotomayor, Kagan, and Ginsburg, and that other guy, I can't think. Is it Breyer? Is that his last name? Kind of the forgotten guy, in my opinion. It's going to be closer to that. And we know on Hillary, we know that that's fully can be expected. Somebody right along the lines. I'm sure she'll check off all of the demographics. It'll have to be a black woman and it'll be some liberal, and there you go. And we'll just have to live with it. And the bad thing is that whoever is the next president will probably get to nominate more than just one, more than just a replacement for Scalia. Probably Ruth Bader Ginsburg will be gone. So that'll even screw it over more. So if you weren't feeling down enough before you came to this show, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to make you feel a little bit even further down in telling you that. The best, it's a bad situation when the best you can do is just deny in something like this. Meaning the Congress, the Senate, just completely does not accept a Barack Obama nominee from now through January next year. That's as good as it's going to get. And even that may not happen depending on how much some of these Republican senators are going to hold strong against Barack Obama. There's already talk out there. I mean, I know that the liberal media, liberal pundits are going to make fun and criticize the Republicans if they don't accept a nominee or don't even hear a nominee. But they did it before, and that information is out. But the Democrats, they've done that to Republican presidents before. It's well known. But when the best you can hope for is just nothing happens along those lines, you know you're hurting. And even it may be that even if you hold out for the rest of Barack Obama's term, well, you certainly can't hold out for 4 years of Hillary Clinton, can you? Or 4 years of Donald Trump, can you? That's where we are. This is a big deal, and it is certainly not gone in our favor. And that's exactly what hit me on Saturday night. My dad, like I said, had the exact same reaction. And as I've told you, he's a conservative, but just your average conservative, looks at the news maybe a couple times a day, then moves on. Me, a guy who has to do this show, research is allowed, so I do a lot of reading. So if it hits us both the same way, you know it's bad. What's been nice to see, though, is all the tributes that have been out there to Antonin Scalia. In fact, I'll link to one at ricochet.com. A lot of people there knew him, had talked to him, had sat in on seminars with him, knew him outside of him wearing the black robes at the Supreme Court, and sounded like a really good guy. A guy who, bizarrely enough, when he wasn't being a judge, he and Ruth Bader Ginsburg were good friends. Despite her being way liberal, him being more to the conservative side of the court, they were good friends and hung out outside of doing their jobs. Very interesting. Kind of a unique situation there, I guess. I don't know if any of the other justices do that or not. And then there's the controversy of how he died, and there was no autopsy. I'm hoping, of course, we know on the left they're not going to care how Antonin Scalia died. They're just happy he's gone, and you don't even have to be on Twitter or know how to use Twitter to understand how crazy happy they were that he died. going so far that they hope that Clarence Thomas is next. I'm just outright saying that. But I'm wondering, I am hoping it. Hey, I don't know what happened. It's weird to me that they say he died of natural causes, but then say that he didn't have a heart attack. A heart attack would consider to be a natural cause, right? I mean, I know that a heart attack can be brought on by force. That can happen. You can have a heart attack during the commission of a crime. And I guess you could say the person was quote-unquote murdered. But a heart attack can also be a natural form of death as well. In fact, when you hear an old person die of something, I automatically think, and they say it's a natural causes, I automatically think heart attack. I automatically think stroke. Brain aneurysm. Those are natural causes of death. In fact, they're quite common. So when they say that natural causes, but it wasn't a heart attack, I'll admit, it gets me to wondering. I just hope we on the right don't get too crazy about it. Because what the thinking, if you don't know, if I have to go into this, there was an interview with one of the cops, or was it one of the people that worked at this ranch where Justice Scalia was. Yeah, he was just laying there, and the guy said he had a pillow over his head. Well, that kind of does sound like somebody smothered him to death, doesn't it? And that's what has gotten this whole thing going. And then there was no autopsy, and there weren't any pictures taken at the scene. And somebody, the coroner said that, Antonin Scalia is dead, but he didn't even examine him and did it over the phone. And I don't have all the details, but there's just a few details and facts that are up in the air right now as to what the body looked like when it was discovered, and then what happened after that, probably for the next hour, in how he was taken, how Scalia's body was, his body was taken out of there, and what was done to it. And if there was foul play, do they have enough information to then investigate? Sounds to me, though, on the other hand, that Antonin Scalia was not in the best of health. You know, my dad coincidentally is the same age. My dad was also born in 1936. I think it's safe to say that my dad at 79 right now was in much better shape than Scalia was. My dad, he's down here. He goes biking every day. He does like 10 miles biking up and down Gulf Boulevard with cars whizzing by him. I can't believe that he does it. I worry about him every day when he does that. He likes to do it, and it's good for him, good for his health. And my dad, for being 79 years old, is in pretty good shape. Antonin Scalia, I don't think, was like that. So, but when you get up to that age, anything can happen, right? Just keel right over. Feeling great, boop, next minute you're dead. But it seems to me Antonin Scalia wasn't in the best of health. He had been complaining that night about not feeling great. Just don't know. I just hope we on the right, those kooks we have on our side, don't go too crazy with this, saying that somebody got to him and killed him, so Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton, next president, can nominate a liberal. I hope we don't go in that direction. Now, if you're going to tell me that his room was broken into, or something like that, or they have something suspicious on video, somebody creeping around, then I'm willing to listen to it. But otherwise, let's just keep the conspiracy stuff out of it, please. Please? Please? I guess the good news is that the rest of those guys, At least Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito are not as old. Hopefully they'll be around for a while. I don't know. Hey, we may not get a Republican president again, and we may never get a conservative Republican president again. Just don't know. And for those of you who are my age, in your 40s, who care about this stuff, who knows the next time a conservative judge is going to be nominated to the bench? Who the heck knows? It's a big deal. And I was listening to the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Garrity. Jim Garrity works at National Review. And Jim Garrity made the point that this is the biggest political death, in his opinion, since JFK was assassinated. And it would be hard to argue with that. And that's 53 years ago. That's all 52 and a half years ago. And so that's saying something. And you put it in the context of it's a presidential year and the court hanging in the balance and who's going to be nominated on the Republican side and Democrat side. It's a big deal. So, now as far as what the Senate's going to do, like I said, the best they can do is deny, and just hope that something good happens in November. The truth is the Senate's going to know whether something good's going to happen in November come August when the conventions are held. We're going to know, in my opinion, regarding this presidential race, that we're going to know fairly early after the conventions who's going to win. It's just, in my opinion, it's just going to be a matter of waiting. And that, I don't think that matters who they nominate. On the Democrat side, doesn't matter who the Republicans nominate. I think that given as much attention that this primary season is getting, as many people who are showing up on the Democrat side and the Republican side, it seems to me that voters are paying a little bit more attention than they normally do to the primary season, which means most people's minds are going to be made up by the time the conventions get around. Once again, no matter who the Republicans pick. Cruz, Rubio, Jeb Bush, Donald Trump, whoever else. Bernie Sanders on the Democrat side, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden jumps in to save the day. Who the heck knows? We're going to know. And then we're going to know at that point in August the kind of judge that we will be getting with the next president. We'll know. But unless Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio on the Republican side gets the nomination, you can kiss an Antonin Scalia person. You can just kiss that belief goodbye. Somebody like that getting nominated. Forget it. Just forget it. Nice, beautiful, bright, lively, just make sure, unicorns and rainbows tonight on the Dentzel domain, right? So, but Antonin Scalia, it's interesting that goes back to what I was talking about yesterday with the Big Tent and how we have a diverse range of opinion on our side and how it's maybe too big. But I'm a big fan of Richard Epstein, who is a commentator, law commentator at Ricochet.com, well-known constitutional guy, a libertarian type of guy, and knew Antonin Scalia very well. And listening to a show that he did yesterday about Antonin Scalia is that, it's so interesting that both of them probably, Richard Epstein never on the Supreme Court, but both of them probably, in most cases, would think the same way. But it's interesting in hearing how Richard Epstein comes to different conclusions than Antonin Scalia would have or had. And it just shows you how we have great minds on our side that sometimes think differently. Whereas you look at lefty judges, the left, They all think the same way. They come to the conclusions the same way. No diversity of thought. However, I think in this primary season, that's actually helping them and hurting us. But I got to go to the break. I'm listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
Red State Talk Radio. Lock it in and rip the knob off.
I know you're watching, so pay attention. You hate my freedom, my religion, and my country. You hate me for speaking my mind. You try to control me with violence and intimidation. You think you can muzzle me with fear? Don't ever confuse me for my politicians or my media. I am an American, free-born and free-bred, and I will call you out for who you are. An Islamic extremist who would kill me for my beliefs. You don't intimidate me. My freedom is more powerful than anything you can possibly do, and I will never, never surrender my rights to your terror. I will say what I think, worship according to my beliefs, and raise my children how I see fit, and I defend it all with the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. I cower to no one, because I am the National Rifle Association of America, and I am freedom's safest place.
This is Donna Fiducia. For 26 years, I was a member of the mainstream media, most recently as an anchor at the Fox News Channel. Ladies and gentlemen, the mainstream media has failed you miserably. Red State Talk Radio will not fail you. Tune into Red State Talk Radio at redstatetalkradio.com, the dominant force in conservative internet talk radio.
I lost my brother Frank in the Battle of Iwo Jima.
He served on 4 combat tours in Vietnam, in Iraq, Afghanistan. There's a life that was lost behind that pin.
I put it on for my wife,
For my husband,
My brother,
my dad.
my son.
we wear it because we honor those that we lost.
To learn more about the stories behind the Gold Star Pins, visit goldstarpins.org.
This is Jeff Carlisi from the Band 38 Special. You're listening to Red State Talk Radio. Lock it in and rip the knob off.
Back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. Let's move on to something else. Let's move away from Antonin Scalia. Rest in peace, Justice Scalia. You did a great job on the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, I don't know how many of your rulings are going to stand. And unfortunately, it may be that a lot of those are going to get overturned in the upcoming years because of the person who's appointed to take your place, and then others who appointed. Sucks. That's all I can say. Sucks. George W. Bush made an appearance in South Carolina yesterday, and this is how topsy-turvy the political world can be. I told you a year ago, more than a year ago, probably from the first days that I started on Red State Talk Radio, which is over a year and a half ago. I had this fear that because Barack Obama was so bad, that when it came to the 2016 election, that Republicans would accept anything that was to the right of Barack Obama. All right, that was my idea, and if Have you seen that meme out there, that picture? It's like George W. Bush looking over his shoulder and waving and saying, "Miss me yet?" You've seen that probably. If you're on the internet and have looked up anything political, you've seen that because it's been out for about 5 years. And my fear was, we're going to have an open primary in 2016. We really have a chance to make a good decision. There's going to be a lot of people running, and a lot of men and women are going to get to make their arguments to the Republicans and conservatives about why each one of them should be picked. And my fear was that we would pick somebody would maybe long a little too much for the George W. Bush days, meaning would go back towards the right, but we wouldn't get a good conservative. We'd just play it safe and go with whoever his replacement might be. And at the time, we were thinking that might be Jeb Bush. Little did I know, right? Little did I know that Donald Trump would jump in and totally throw all of that up on its head. Now, I'm at the point where having George W. Bush again probably wouldn't be so bad. Once again, it's funny how that all happens. But of course, George W. Bush was a topic on Saturday night, and I went over that on Sunday, the special edition show, and then yesterday's show. But it's a complete coincidence, I think, that George W. Bush shows up right after that. I think that on Donald Trump's part, it was on purpose. I think he knew that George W. Bush was going to be showing up in South Carolina, so Donald Trump wanted to make George W. Bush the focus of the arguments that he had with Jeb Bush during that debate. But going back then, like a year and a half ago, if I would have heard, not knowing anything else, if I would have heard that George W. Bush was campaigning for his brother in South Carolina, I probably would have been pretty happy about that, but in a different way. I'd be thinking, well, he's bringing his brother out because he might be not doing so well in South Carolina, and there's a true conservative, who's ahead of Jeb, and Jeb thinks that by bringing W in, he can pull some of those conservatives away who still long for the George W. Bush days. Remember George W. Bush as being a good guy, big military guy, making sure the United States was protected, and might try to do that. And I would say, you know what? That must mean that a conservative is ahead. Well, that's not what it means at all. The truth is, Jeb Bush is bringing in George W. Bush because Jeb Bush's campaign is faltering. He's bringing him in because Jeb Bush is getting beat by a kook, Donald Trump. Never could I have seen that. Never could I have seen the day that Jeb Bush would call in his brother to help him out because Jeb Bush is getting beat by a guy who's even further to the left of Jeb Bush. And yes, Donald Trump is that. Never did I think that Jeb Bush would have to call in his brother right after they had a debate where the leading Republican was saying that George W. Bush lied about the Iraq War. Had you told me that a year and a half ago, I would have said, what? And if you'd have told me that kook was leading the polls and had just won New Hampshire, came in second in Iowa, and was getting double, nationwide, if you want to believe the polls, double his nearest competitor, I would have said, what? But this is where we are. It's no different than with Antonin Scalia talk in the beginning of the show. This is where we are. He dies, we're screwed. A more liberal judge is going to get nominated unless Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio get appointed to the bench. That's the way it goes. It's like an inside straight right now. It's like if you're in baseball terms, there's 10 games left. You're like 6 games behind the next team. You're out of the playoffs by 6 games. And you have to win all your games, and the other team has to lose at least 6 of its games. You can still do it. It's still possible. And there's many stories out there over the years of teams coming from behind to get into the playoffs. One team gets hot, another team cools off. That happens, but that's not really the position you want to be in come the end of the season. You want to be like the Pittsburgh Pirates, who kind of just held that first wild card spot for most, the second half of the summer going into the fall last year, what they've done the last couple years. That's where you want to be. And maybe have a shot at winning the division if things go right. That's not where we are. If you are a Marco Rubio fan or a Ted Cruz fan, behind, things can still go right, but there's a bigger chance that they're going to go wrong. Now, for Jeb Bush, it's even worse than that. He has to hope that he wins the next 10 games and the team in front of him loses 10 games. And he's bringing in, George W. Bush to make sure that he does all he can to win and just crossing his fingers that something will happen. So we're in a bad situation there with justices, and then we're in a bad situation regarding the nomination process, the primary process. Now, what do I think about him? I don't know if it's going to, I don't know how it's going to help him. Maybe. Really what I would prefer, and I even have this written down on my notes, I'm at the point I'd love to see a Donald Trump versus George W. Bush debate. That's what I'd like to see. We already know George W. Bush, a little bit different character than Jeb Bush. I'm not going to vote for Jeb Bush. If he were to somehow pull this out, I'm not voting for him. But it's for different reasons than I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump. Not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. But George W. Bush, as much as people made fun of him and in the way he talked, he was not a guy to mess around with. See, Jeb Bush, he's kind of like the younger brother. No matter what else I may think about him politically, he does come across as, he's not Fredo. I mean, if we're going to go back to that Godfather's comparison that I always make about Hillary Clinton, she's the Fredo, whereas Bill Clinton was Michael Corleone. Mm-hmm. 2 different types. Michael Corleone, very capable. Fredo, not capable. That's who Hillary is. I wouldn't say that Jeb Bush is Fredo. He's somewhere in between Michael and Fredo, and he's not Sonny because Sonny was a hothead, and I don't think that's how Jeb Bush is either. In fact, Jeb Bush is probably like I forget her name. Was it Carla? I forget. The part played by Talia Shire. Probably that's who Jeb Bush is. If Jeb Bush was in The Godfather, he would have played Talia Shire's the sister's part. Now that is funny. She was the one who wanted to make nice. That's how Jeb Bush, not to say, now granted, in the second Godfather, she went off the date and started dating these floozy guys and everything. But in the first Godfather, she was the one that tried to keep everything together. And, of course, we know that Michael had her husband murdered. But she wasn't completely incapable like Fredo, but she wasn't Michael or Sonny either. That's how Jeb Bush is. Whereas George W., you know what? He is a little bit like Michael. I think he does have that streak in him. That raw, I think he does get angry. a little bit ruthless, and I think that helped. We saw that during the Bush years, with his years, with Karl Rove at his side. And we know what they thought about true conservatives like us. So it would be interesting, being that he doesn't have to be president anymore, he doesn't have to be, I guess, as much presidential. It'd be interesting to see him and Donald Trump get into something, wouldn't it? I know that's that's not going to happen, I don't think. Who knows who knows these days? Who knows? I think that George W. Bush, if he were to get into an argument with Donald Trump, would handle himself very well, better than Jeb Bush. And Jeb Bush has been getting better in his confrontations with Donald Trump. I think George W. Bush would be probably pretty good to start. I think he would be pretty good to start. And, in my opinion, it would be definitely two alpha males going at it. But in my opinion, George W. Bush is even more of an alpha male than Donald Trump is. I think. Now, granted, neither of them are conservative. Both of them have opinions on political issues that I disagree with. But as far as being good guys, we know who the good guy is in that. The good guy is George W. Bush. He's the guy that you would want in the cubicle next to you at some job that you would have. If you want to need her to work on some project, if you're a pilot and you're meeting another pilot for the first time, you're working for Southwest, and we know pilots are being paired up, different pilots all the time. George W. Bush is the kind of guy you'd want to get into the cockpit with. And then just say that knowing that he had pilot experience. Donald Trump, you would not want to be in the cockpit of an airplane with your co-pilot being Donald Trump for 4 hours. You would not want to do that. Just as guys go, as people go, male or female. But it would be interesting. I just don't know. Jeb Bush pulling him in. I also read this story that Jeb Bush, his super PAC, is pulling some ads out. Was it South Carolina or Nevada? Mike Murphy running that Right to Rise PAC, super PAC. He was the guy. Mike Murphy, by the way, was the guy who spent most of that money in New Hampshire. Not, to no avail. Didn't work. Be interesting to see after this is all over what Mike Murphy is going to have to say about himself. We'll see if he can be honest about all of it. So there is a stench coming off of the Jeb Bush campaign that says that they're closer to the end of their campaign than the beginning. They're very close, in fact, to the end. In fact, once again, I think they're going to go through Super Tuesday with all of that. But if his numbers don't get better and they're pulling ads, which means they don't want to spend any more money, then, the writing's kind of on the wall, to use a horrible cliche. He's not going away tomorrow. Not going to go away after South Carolina. Not going to go away after Nevada. But that's Super Tuesday, whatever date that is. I guess it's in March. Then, then we'll see what happens. I just don't think this is going to save him. Jeb Bush has run a questionable campaign with or without Donald Trump. I don't know where Jeb Bush would be. Would he be doing better if Donald Trump wasn't around? Maybe. Would he be doing worse if Donald Trump was around? Who knows? I'm sure Jeb Bush supporters would say, yeah, I'd be doing better if Donald Trump wasn't around. I think that'd be hard to prove. Hard to prove. But Jeb Bush is getting beat by Marco Rubio. He's getting beat by Ted Cruz. And if Jeb Bush drops out, who would his supporters go to? Who would he endorse? Is he going to endorse Donald Trump? I don't think so. Is he going to endorse Marco Rubio after all the tiffs they've had? I don't think so. You know, the bizarre part after all this, and this is the way politics works, it works, and that's why I just stick to conservatism for the most part on this, just trying to figure out what the conservative opinion should be on all of this. In the end, it could be Jeb Bush drops out and endorses Ted Cruz, the guy who I think should be the front runner, the guy who I think is most conservative, and then a guy who I wouldn't vote for endorses Ted Cruz. That's the way politics goes. And that's why I've continued to tell you that regarding what has happened in the last 8 years, 12 years with George W. Bush, and we as conservatives being frustrated, it's just you never know where it's going to go. We take all of these things as defining moments. I'm not putting up with this stuff anymore, and I don't like the Bushes. And then Jeb Bush could drop out and endorse your favorite guy, Ted Cruz. Then what? I know, I've told you, I'm not voting for him. But once again, I don't have any hatred for the Bushes. I don't have the disdain that I've seen conservatives show for George W. Bush. It's just simply to me, he's not conservative, so he can't get my vote. Same way with Jeb Bush. Once again, all these people getting crazy about the Bushes. Just this hatred that goes on, I don't get that. I just won't vote for him because I don't think that they are for the best for the country, do their political positions. And that is, in the end, what I look at them for them. Otherwise, I think they are good people. You'd want them to be your next-door neighbors. You would not want Donald Trump to be your next-door neighbor. There's a difference. But in both cases, I wouldn't vote for either because of their political positions. So you just have to watch all of this, how crazy you get with this. Because it could be you get so crazy about Jeb Bush that guess what? Donald Trump sneaks into the tent, and then what? Jeb Bush, he looks like Antonin Scalia compared to Donald Trump. Right? Keep in mind, you can't believe a word Donald Trump says. I wish George W. Bush well. I'm just hoping, though, that a lot of people, I hope that Ted Cruz supporters, Marco Rubio supporters in South Carolina don't see George W. Bush show up and say, man, would it be nice to have George W. Bush again? Look at Donald Trump and this and Hillary and Bernie. And then those people switch their votes. Now, that would be an absolute disaster. That would be a disaster as well. I just don't know if George W. Bush at this point can peel away any of Donald Trump's supporters. Specifically because I think most Donald Trump supporters believe what Donald Trump said on Saturday night regarding George W. Bush. And in that way, going back to that National Review piece from yesterday, Donald Trump is not a revolutionary. He's a Democrat. And now you see why in those polls with Donald Trump against Hillary against Bernie, he loses because you know what? Eventually those Democrats say, well, you know what? I can have Donald Trump, but I'd really prefer Hillary. Oh, in a head-to-head, I get to pick Hillary? Absolutely. I get to pick Bernie against Donald Trump? Oh, I like Donald Trump, but Bernie Sanders, I'm much more in line with him. Absolutely. So I don't know how George W. Bush could take any of those people back to the side because I don't think they're on our side in the first place. These open primaries and the big tent both have been a killer for us. I just hope some people see the light. But unfortunately, I'm to the end of the show. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I remind you, you can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. You can find my books at Amazon. You can go to my Twitter feed, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. edwarddentzel.com is where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. You can also download my free book there, a free first chapter of my next novel, The Comebacks. Find me at YouTube, Podomatic, Podbean, SoundCloud, Facebook, LinkedIn, and the iTunes Store. I am everywhere. No wonder I'm always worn out. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. Have a great night.